Coming in at number 5, we've got Dimensional Shamblers. You should be able to tell from the name, but this is a race of monsters from another dimension. They first appeared in Lovecraft's The Horror in the Museum, but they were given some more detailed treatment in Clark Ashton Smith's The Hunters from Beyond. You see, they are Hunters from Beyond. Dimensional Shamblers are short, crouching creatures with skin that seems to be mummified. They've got terrifying maw heads, sort of part ape, part canine deals. In these maws are rows of sharp, crooked fangs stained with God knows what. Their eyes are set back, appearing as glowing yellow slits, and they have long arms with absolutely wicked claws. All these features will seem material if you run into one, but don't be fooled. Being from another world, these Shamblers are immaterial in ours. Doesn't mean they're not a threat, though. Their dimension is a terrible one, a long, gray, oozing plain beneath skies where the fumes of hell were writhing like a million ghostly and distorted dragons. If a human is introduced to this world, they'll sink into the ooze, allowing them to be consumed, body, mind, and soul by the Shamblers. And humans are quite often brought here. Shamblers can be brought to our world through certain spells, but also through pure willpower. So when I say you should never summon them, I really mean just don't ever focus too much energy onto them. If they do end up on our plane, they will take to hunting straight away. They're very interested in taking down some folks. Once they've chosen a victim, they will suck them into the ooze dimension. Often other Shamblers will show up to help. It may seem like they're grabbing the person with their claw arms, but in actuality they're using a form of hypnosis to drag them along. Those with strong wills can resist, but if more Shamblers appear, it becomes much more difficult. If you're near a person being sucked in, you might even catch a glimpse into the hell world, but you'd probably rather not, right? Coming in at number 4, we've got Byakhee. Okay, actually I'll understand if you try to summon one of these. Just make sure you're ready to own up to the consequences. Byakhee are cool as hell. They're interstellar predators who can travel through the vacuum of space no problem. They have a special organ called a hewn that makes the vast expanse a cakewalk. Byakhee are lizard-like humanoids with big leathery wings. Through the use of their hewn, they can also levitate without flapping their appendages. Their special space organ is located in their thorax and allows them to travel faster than the speed of light. Like I said before, they can survive space unaided. And here's where it gets pretty wicked. People could hypothetically hitch a ride with them. Yeah, you heard me right. If you befriended one and were able to survive traveling through the desolate cosmos, you could potentially hop on its back and ride all over the universe. Worth it, you know, if you don't die. Unfortunately, there's no way whatsoever that humans would be able to remain alive in a situation like this. Dang. So even if you're feeling relatively confident, summoning one is a bad call in general. They can put their metabolism into overdrive when exceeding light speed, meaning that wherever they end up, they're gonna be real hungry. And at that point, they'll descend to the surface of any planet to start hunting, and they'll eat pretty much anything, humans included. So if you think you've got a pretty good chance of making it to the other end of warp speed, it'll probably just eat you anyways. Maybe someday we'll make it out there. Coming in at number 3, we've got Neothelid. Remember when I talked about having a strong will as a defense against dimensional Shamblers? Oh, that's not really going to work here, unfortunately. Neothelids are huge creatures with psionic abilities. They often teleport around, usually to gain tactical advantage over their foes and prey. They can also communicate with each other using telepathy and manipulate huge objects with powerful telekinesis. And if that wasn't enough, they can also fly without wings. Cool, but very deadly. Their minds are strong enough to overwhelm weak beings, which humans definitely are, and sometimes the brainwaves are enough to kill. In addition to their powerful minds, they also have incredible physical strength. With hides that resist all blows except for cold iron and a resistance to all but the most powerful of spells, Neothelids will not be taken down easily. You would think that this would be the extent of their power, but you'd be wrong. They also have acid breath and 4 long barbed tongues for dealing with aggressors, and it's not uncommon for these gigantic worms to swallow beings whole. As the supposed spawn of Shudde M'ell, they are essentially biologically immortal. They can live forever if they don't kill each other or stoke the ire of an elder or outer god. However, their eggs take centuries to hatch, meaning that they have a hard time out reproducing potential enemies. Eons ago, Neothelids had established a huge subterranean empire. Their slow spawning lifestyle was overwhelmed by species that could breed faster though. These days they fight plenty of proxy wars with their Sugathi servants. If one were to be brought to Earth, I highly doubt that anyone could do anything about it. We just don't have the brain power in our tiny human minds. I guess we're pretty good at breeding though. Coming in number 2, we've got Ybula. Up until this point, we've talked a lot about things that are largely inhuman. They're scary because we don't understand them, and they're powerful enough to simply run us over. But what's particularly scary is a foe that infiltrates and manipulates from the inside. And Ybula is a race of human/Deep One hybrids. These highly intelligent and powerful cephalopod humans were created by the Deep Ones to serve and protect imprisoned starspawn. Largely established near the salt lakes of Tibet, they are naturally acclimated to harsh living conditions. Millions of years ago, their population was more formidable, but even with decreased numbers, they are a threat to be reckoned with. And Ybula interact with humans in many different ways, but do so largely in a non-beneficial capacity. Some say they have an Elder Thing weapon stowed away somewhere as an ultimate answer of sorts. It seems to be a virus capable of wiping out all humans and Shoggoth. Some think they're holding onto it in order to threaten mankind and make us do their bidding. But really, they don't need an ultimate weapon to make us do that. They age extremely slowly, with lifespans greatly exceeding all species on Earth. Their elders possess great intellect and spells, including the ability to shapeshift. Often they'll take the form of humans for various reasons. And Ybula understand technology, but prefer to use spells. Something that not many know, including younger members of the species, is that the elders are actually able to preserve their life force and thoughts for a while after physically dying. Then their spirit can inhabit a new host, which is often a human baby. This being will then grow up like a normal human, but with hidden cosmic knowledge. Once they're fully grown, they can manipulate their DNA to become a full Ybula. A majority of these creatures will interact with humans often. Some simply want to be sadistic and torture. Others will use humans for experiments, and of course, some act kind of like Cenobites, enjoying human sensual pleasure to the extreme. So if you've ever been worried about a subterranean lizard people controlling the world, you might want to shift that concern to the Ybula. Coming in at number 1, we've got Shudde M'ell. Back to crazy worms. This monster takes the form of a great gray worm with tentacles sprouting from its head. It burrows through the earth, melting rocks, and causes earthquakes just by moving. In fact, it appears as though it was responsible for the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. Shudde M'ell is the supreme regent of the Chthonians, a species of giant tentacled worms. He is the largest and most powerful. Back before humanity existed, he teamed up with the Great Old Ones in a war against the Elder Gods. When they lost, the Chthonians were imprisoned underground as punishment, with Elder Gods using Starstone artifacts to keep them there. However, once humans arrived on the scene, we messed everything up with curiosity, as per usual. Shamans started looking into the strange outcroppings surrounding their settlements and came across various Starstone artifacts. As these stones became objects of status and power among shamans, many people sought them out, and in doing so, they inadvertently freed the Chthonians. Soon after this, the species, led by Shudde M'ell, excavated all over the world, infesting just about every part of the planet. At one point, humans thought they might be able to fight back against the Supreme Regent. After driving some Chthonians back a little bit, they got cocky. Attacking the huge worm with noxious radioactive material, they damaged it, but were unable to kill it. They underestimated his powers, and in doing so, lost all of their equipment and supporters. This unfortunate event made them wonder if it was even possible to kill them. So if you see any mysterious Starstone-based artifacts, just leave them alone, okay? If the Elder Gods had to imprison these beings instead of killing them, what makes us think we have even a little chance? Coming in at number 5, we've got Nyogthala. It's debatable whether this fiend is an avatar of Nyarlathotep or not, but for the purpose of this video, we'll assume that Nyogthala is a beast of its very own. Although being a part of Nyarlathotep would also earn you a spot on this list. Best described as inky black shadows, Nyogthala is a great old one that often shows up in the Cthulhu mythos. Best known from its appearance in Henry Kuttner's The Salem Horror, it can strike fear deep into the heart of just about anyone. Some folks call it the thing that should not be, which is quite the moniker. Imagine being so horrid that your title describes a preferred state of existence where you just aren't real. Sheesh. Nyogthala can be summoned to the Earth's surface from secret caverns and fissures. Some say that it originates from Leng, while others have seen it in all sorts of places. Regardless, once summoned to Earth, it is very difficult to get rid of. The amorphous mass made up of an unnameable sticky black substance causes chaos and mayhem wherever it roams. Tentacles sprout from its body to interact with the world around it, choking and crushing all it comes across. After the accidental reincarnation of the witch Abigail Prynne, Nyogthala was summoned to the surface. Luckily, an occultist was ready with the necessary tools to send it back. Only through the use of a ritual using an ankh, a special elixir, and an incantation can Nyogthala be sent back to its dimension. So if you're not prepared with all three of those things, I'd say don't summon it. Although I'm sure some folks would love to see it run free. Coming in at number 4, we've got Ghroth. There is absolutely no way that the moon from Majora's Mask wasn't in some way inspired by this Lovecraftian deity. I remember being scared silly by that constantly encroaching, horrid-faced lunar body as a kid, and honestly, I still sorta am now. Unavoidable destruction slowly making its way towards you, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Well, actually in Zelda there was a way to stop it, but in real life, we're pooched. That is what makes Ghroth so terrifically terrifying. It's a living planetoid originally created by Ramsey Campbell. It sort of looks like a gigantic red-brown moon with a huge red eye smack dab in the middle. On the surface, it is composed of iron, ash, and gas, and beneath the crust there are vast seas churning, making up that eye. As it drifts through the universe, Ghroth will close its eye in order to avoid detection. All the while it sings a siren song known as the Music of Spheres. You know, because moons are spheres. This tune will awaken any sleeping great ones and outer gods that may be close enough to hear. And of course, the awakening of these beings often means massive destruction. This isn't the only way Ghroth can cause mayhem though. It also enjoys destroying entire planets itself. In fact, now that I think about it, Ghroth is a bit like a natural sentient Death Star. No exhaust ports either. One notable planetary destruction involved blasting the home of Byakhee to smithereens, forcing the bringer of pestilence to move to Earth where it now resides. Like, come on man, we've got enough going on without deadly interplanetary scorpions taking up residence. And to make matters worse, we can't even spend our last moments in peace and harmony. As Ghroth gets closer to planets that it intends to destroy, they experience insane natural disasters. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tidal waves, wicked storms, you name it. It doesn't seem like Ghroth tends to cut deals with humans either, so strike this one off your summoning bucket list. Coming in at number 3, we've got the Xothic Demon Trio. Lynn Carter penned a series of short stories based on the Cthulhu mythos, featuring 3 terrible deities, sons of Cthulhu. These terrible monsters inspired much in terms of cult worship and mystical artifacts, which led to a smorgasbord of human suffering. In the cycle, scholars head on expeditions to discover the artifacts related to these gods. Of course, many are driven mad just by their presence. Often these gods will enter people's dreams, not unlike their father. And they inspired madness encouraging bloodthirsty cults too. The apple does not fall far from the tree apparently. The youngest son is Xothic M'ell. This cone-shaped, razor-fanged freak has gigantic starfish arms and a mane of tentacles. He lives at the bottom of the sea waiting to be set free. Next up is Nyogthala, the second son. It appears as a gigantic humanoid frog cyclops. Nyogthala is so large that its fingertips are often mistaken for mountainous heads. Some say that it can only be measured in miles. Imprisoned in an abyss, it is served by the Yugs and their lord Ub. The first and most fearsome son of Cthulhu is known as Ygolonac. Horrid in appearance and in power, this Gorgon-like being takes great pleasure in immobilizing people and leaving their minds intact. Their consciousness is trapped in an immobile shell forever, causing them to go mad. The cult worshipping him was once the most powerful on the continent, but has since fallen from grace thanks to intervention from some elder gods. All 3 power-hungry mini-Cthulhus have been imprisoned for eons and are just waiting for their chance to break free and rule some worlds. Don't give them that opportunity. Coming in at number 2, we've got Hastur, the King in Yellow, the unspeakable one, he who is not to be named. Originally described as the god of shepherds, Hastur has since taken many forms. Some know him as the Feaster from afar, a black shriveled monster with razor-tipped tentacles. The Feaster pierces people's skulls and sucks out their brains. Hastur was first mentioned in Robert W. Chambers' The King in Yellow. The collection of short stories centers around a fictional play sharing the same name as the collection's title. After a relatively benign first act, it will drive readers insane with an absolutely wicked Act 2. Lovecraft was so enamored with the idea of this King in Yellow that he started to include elements in his own stories. Hastur takes many forms in Lovecraft's tales and can be interpreted as a person, place, object, or god. Everything seems to come back to the cult of Hastur and Carcosa. Have you seen the yellow sign? And finally at number 1, we've got Yog-Sothoth. Now if there is a Lovecraftian monster with a reputation for being summoned, it has to be Yog-Sothoth, the all-seeing outer god. Progenitor of Cthulhu and Hastur, Yog-Sothoth is often called upon to assist mortals in performing all manners of occult deeds and rituals. 2 particularly famous instances are in the case of Charles Dexter Ward and the Dunwich Horror, both written by HP himself. In the case of Charles Dexter Ward, Yog-Sothoth is mostly mentioned in passing. At some point, the main antagonist, Joseph Curwen, managed to summon Yog-Sothoth to gain forbidden knowledge. Curwen, along with his other warlock and occultist buddies, used this knowledge for evil, although the extent of which is up for debate. A prime example of this would be using certain cosmic powers to bring people back to life through their essential salts, which he did later to himself in order to take over his great-great-great-grandson's life. In the Dunwich Horror, Yog-Sothoth actually managed to create 2 half-human offspring during a visit to Earth. It seems that Grandpa Whately was greatly interested in the occult and managed to summon the All-Seer to Earth to mate with his daughter. This produced 2 terrifying beings, the titular Barnsize Horror and Wilbur. The latter of the 2 was much more human, but not quite human enough to avoid being a total pariah. He aged quickly, reaching full maturity in about a decade, and was taught dark rituals by his grandfather. Other than being a gross nuisance, Wilbur didn't cause too much trouble. His brother, however, bore a striking resemblance to their father. In fact, once it was left alone following the deaths of Grandpa Whately and Wilbur, Yog Jr. broke free of the barn and went on a rampage through Dunwich. Only an experienced team of occult scholars from Miskatonic could put a stop to all this. Now, these are only a couple examples of what might happen if you summon Yog-Sothoth, but you can be sure any knowledge or power it grants you will come at a grave cost. Weigh your options before making a deal or performing any rituals.
In at number 5 we have Cthulhu. Cthulhu is a great old one who lies in a death-like slumber beneath the Pacific Ocean in his sunken city of R'lyeh. He is the titular character of the Cthulhu mythos, first appearing in the 1928 story The Call of Cthulhu. Now, while he is not the most powerful of Lovecraft's creations, he is certainly the most famous, with his name becoming associated with evil and Lovecraftian horror since the 1920s. This monstrous creature was born on the planet Vol, I think that's how you say it, located in the 23rd Nebula. He travelled to the star Xothic where he spawned his offspring. In most stories, Cthulhu lays dormant deep under the ocean within the sunken city of R'lyeh, but he can still influence the world via many telepathic powers and, of course, his many cult and otherworldly minions. It is said that once Cthulhu awakens, he shall rise from the depth and end the world. Thankfully he is yet to do so, but he has come close. In the 1920s, a group of sailors came across his sunken city, which had been brought to the surface by the alignment of the stars. They opened up the strange buildings only for Cthulhu to exit and attack them. The creature halted its attack when the sailors used their ship to cut him in half. As they sailed away, they could see Cthulhu reforming into a whole being again. His appearance changes from story to story, but he is most often portrayed as a monster of vaguely humanoid shape with a squid-like face and wings. He is also considered terrifyingly large and apocalyptic, being the size of a mountain. Being nearly godlike to humans, Cthulhu is immortal and has great strength and can endure great amounts of damage and can only be killed by near omnipotent power. In at number 4 we have Ygolonac. Also known as the Defiler, Ygolonac is a creation of Ramsey Campbell, first appearing in the short story Cold Print. He is a great old one and the god of depravity and perversions. However, it should be noted that Ygolonac is over any type of perversions that any sapient being can conceive of. He is an entity so feared that the Cthulhu cult is noted to hold him in contempt. He resides behind a brick wall in an undisclosed area, his goal being to eventually break free from his entrapment and destroy everything in his path. To this end, Ygolonac creates a cult enlisting folks who read forbidden literature. This results in him manipulating his victims into reading a chapter of the Revelation of Byakhee, which houses his name. Once summoned, he will ask the summoner to become his priest. If not, he will devour them. Not only that, but he has the ability to possess potential hosts. Upon acquiring a host, Ygolonac is manifested as a morbidly obese man lacking a head and neck. On top of that, he sports 2 mouths on the palms of his hands. In the short story we mentioned earlier, Cold Print, Ygolonac takes over a bookstore after he gruesomely murdered the owner and took his skin. To quote Revelations of Byakhee, Volume 12, beyond a gulf in the subterranean night, a passage leads to a wall of massive bricks, and beyond the wall rises Ygolonac, to be served by the tattered eyeless figures of the dark. Long has he slept beyond the wall, and those which crawl over the bricks scuttle across his body, never knowing it to be Ygolonac. But when his name is spoken or read, he comes forth to be worshipped, or to feed and take on the shape and soul of those he feeds upon. For those who read of the evil and search for its own form within their minds call forth evil, and so may Ygolonac return to walk among men. Very creepy. In at number 3 we have Nyarlathotep. Also known as the Crawling Chaos, Nyarlathotep is an outer god hailing from the Cthulhu Cthulhu mythos. A creation of HP Lovecraft, he first appeared in his prose poem of the same name released back in 1920. Now he differs from other deities in the mythos in a number of different ways. Most of the outer gods such as Yog-Sothoth and Azathoth are exiled to the stars, and most of the great old ones are sleeping and dreaming like Cthulhu. Nyarlathotep, however, is active and frequently walks the earth in the guise of a human being, usually a tall, slim, joyous man. It is said that he has thousands of other forms, all reputed to be horrific and sanity blasting. Now, while most outer gods seem to have cults serving them, Nyarlathotep seems to serve several cults and takes care of their affairs in the other outer gods' absence. Not only that, but Nyarlathotep uses human language as opposed to the alien languages the other gods use. He also enacts the will of the outer gods and is their messenger, heart and soul, the immemorial figure of the deputy or messenger of hidden and terrible powers. He's also the servant of Azathoth, whose fitful wishes he immediately fulfills. Like I said before, his first appearance was in the eponymous short story by Lovecraft, in which he wanders the earth, gathering legions of followers through his demonstrations of strange and seemingly magical instruments. Coming in at number 2, we have Yog-Sothoth. Yog-Sothoth is a cosmic entity and outer god hailing from the world of Lovecraft. Born of the nameless mist, he is the progenitor of Cthulhu, Hastur the unspeakable, and the ancestor of the Vormi. Now, throughout many different stories in the mythos, his appearance changes depending on the author. However, there seems to be a common agreement that Yog-Sothoth visually manifests as a mass of glowing orbs, with eyes or sometimes even tendrils in some versions. It is also heavily implied that he is omniscient and is locked outside the universe, which means he can know and see all of space-time all at once. In other words, there are no secrets kept from Yog-Sothoth. Now, Yog-Sothoth is called upon from time to time to assist mortals in performing occult deeds or rituals, the most notable occurring in the case of Charles Dexter Ward and the Dunwich Horror. In one case involving the town of Dunwich, Yog-Sothoth is known to have been summoned for a sole purpose of impregnating a human female, who then gave birth to 2 partially human children, where still the summoner was the husband, who was known to have stood on a hill in a circle of stones with a Necronomicon while shouting the name of Yog-Sothoth from the summit. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Azathoth. Also known as the blind idiot god, the demon sultan, and the nuclear chaos, Azathoth is the overarching antagonist of the Cthulhu mythos and my personal favourite god. He is a cosmic and boundless deity of colossal proportion and the great and all-powerful ruler of the outer gods. He first appeared in the 1922 unfinished short story of Azathoth in name only, before being mentioned in multiple other Lovecraft stories, including the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. It is said that he is omnipotent, beyond the power of the great old ones such as Cthulhu and even his fellow outer gods, that includes Yog-Sothoth and Yib. Azathoth is seen as the all-powerful creator of all of existence. Azathoth's appearance is only hinted at throughout the mythos, being described as occupying a position outside of the universe, where it is attended by a cohort of alien servants who continually bathe it, with the sounds of pipes and drums. All of reality is merely a part of Azathoth's dream, which was unknowingly created by itself. When Azathoth awakens, all things will end once and for all, and all will once again be Azathoth. He cannot be destroyed, as the concept of destruction is merely his dream, and he exists beyond the concept of speed, strength, mortals, and the outer gods, as they are all merely part of his dream. Essentially, none of this is real, we're just inside Azathoth's dream. Love that for us.